we'll make a start, shall we?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Adam. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today on hopefully this lovely Friday morning. I know it's very, very windy where I am. I'm hoping it's a little bit nicer where you are. Today, what we're going to be doing is delivering a free webinar by Pam Wellness for you. And with today's taster session, we're going to explore strategies for sustainable corporate health and well-being, which essentially aims to reduce the prevalence and impact of stress or burnout on employees. So hopefully lots of useful hints and tips for you to take away today. So a little introduction before we start. Adam already did give me a little bit of an intro, but as you can see here, my name is Shannon Campbell. I'm a health and wellness expert at Pam Wellness and a qualified sports physiologist. And I'm very happy and excited to be presenting this for you today with my colleague Adam, who will just give you a little bit of information about himself now.
Thank you very much, Shannon. And again, it's such a pleasure to be here, as Shannon said, on a very windy but nice sunny day where I am in sunny Cheshire. And my name is Adam Brazendale. I've been at PAM for 8 years now as a counsellor and step care therapist before joining the training team at PAM, where I'm now the senior mental health trainer. And my role involves the design, development and facilitation of a number of workshops, webinars and broadcasts on the many topics of mental health and mental well-being.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Adam. What we're going to do first before we get started is just pass a few bits of information on to you. So as you can see here, this is a free high-level taster session of our training and workshops that we offer here at Pam Wellness. This session covers some of our training around how to support mental well-being in the workplace. But as you will see as we go on, we do offer, a lot of workshops. And so what we're going to do here is just showcase a little bit of that, what we've got to offer for you. If you do have any questions, please ask these in the Q&A chat throughout the webinar. As you can see, the button at the top of your screen. And what we will do is following the end of the workshop, me and Adam will try and answer them to the best of our ability. And then training and workshops. If you enjoy what you are seeing today, if you think you could potentially try and incorporate some of this that we've got to offer you within your daily work life, please contact us at the email address below. And at the end of the session, we do have a list of other workshops that we offer in case any of them pique your fancy. If I could just ask everyone to keep themselves on mute, that would be absolutely fantastic. Not that we think you're going to interrupt us, but just we might answer a question that you've got as we go through. So thank you very much for joining first and foremost, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to pass over to Adam now, who is going to go into the first part of our workshop.
Thank you very much, Shannon. So today we're going to start off by looking at the impact burnout can have, not just on individual employees, but on organisational performance and teams. And we're going to explore some practical strategies for promoting work-life balance and mental wellness in the workplace. Now, before we go on to the next slide, I'd just like you to all take a second or two just to think about one of the main causes of burnout, and that is stress. And stress is something we're all like to be familiar with, but I'd just like you to think what comes to mind when you hear that term stress. Have a second or two just thinking about that term. What comes to mind? Now, stress is a term we're all likely to be familiar with. We're all likely to experience stress at some point in our lives, and many psychologists have tried to research the concept of stress and define it. One such definition was from Selly in 1973, who defined it as the non-specific response of the body to any demand for change. Now, this is a helpful global definition of stress. However, it can be defined in many different ways, and research on stress and the stress response is vast. The definition we're going to be using today is stress is a feeling you may have experienced when the demands on you seem greater than that of your ability to cope. On the slide, you'll see what's called the human function curve. This was devised by Dr. Nixon in 1982. And as you can see, it showed the relationship between stress and task performance. So we've got stress at the bottom, and we've got task performance on the vertical axis. And it shows that we reach our optimal level of performance with an intermediate level of stress. So that middle part of the screen there is where the curve is at its highest point, and that is where we reach our intermediate, our peak performance. So many of us will see that possibly when we define stress, that we possibly see it negatively. But actually, if we look at the bottom left-hand corner, where stress is at its minimal, there's poor performance. So zero stress equals zero performance. In fact, the curve itself starts just a little away from that vertical axis. That's probably where the curve meets, or the two axes meet, is where we're sleeping. Our body then starts to produce in its circadian rhythm stress hormones, which wakes us and allows us to get into that stage where we're not pulling up any trees. Don't get me wrong. We're probably just waking up. We're doing some of those functions we need to do on a day-to-day basis. We're in that drone zone. But as the pressure and levels of stress increase, so does our performance until we get to this C zone where we're starting to be a bit calmer, a bit more challenged. We've been a bit creative. We've seen some improvements. And at that middle point, we're in eustress, that good part of stress. But then as the stress continues, our performance doesn't continue. In fact, then we get into distress. And at the bottom, we can then also see too much arousal and stress results in poorer performance. So hopefully, we can see, therefore, that stress is necessary in our lives. It's a normal physiological response to demands and pressure. It's not always maladaptive and actually can help to propel us into action, help us grow and learn. But again, we can see that performance doesn't improve forever. There is that peak where we're at our optimal level of performance. And if our stress levels continue to increase further, we then fall into that distress zone, which can then lead to exhaustion, physical and mental illness like anxiety, depression, and eventually burnout. And once we start to fall into the distress zone, we will see symptoms physiologically, psychologically. But so long as we can keep that stress within work, for example, and turn that stress response on and off, so we de-stress, we're taking breaks, we're using our annual leave, the impact will be limited and total burnout will not take place. However, if we get to a stage where we're no longer able to turn that stress response on and off, then our body will stay in a high state of alert consistently when it's not made to do. So in fact, imagine that stress response as a little button. It just gives us an injection of adrenaline. It gets us up to that curve, gets us that optimal performance. Maybe when we've got a deadline, we start to perform a little bit better, don't we, sometimes? But if we keep pressing that button, eventually it gets stuck. And that's when our body produces too much of those stress hormones. This eventually would lead to burnout. So now we know what stress is, we're now going to look more specifically at what work-related stress is and burnout. So let's consider, first of all, what we mean by work-related stress. According to the Health and Safety Executive, work-related stress is the adverse reaction people have to excessive pressures or other types of demand placed on them at work. Now, it could be related to the type and design of work, colleague relationships, or the work environment, for example, which can cause that stress response. Now, it's important to remember that it depends on what an individual perceives as a stressor. So stress in itself is not a diagnosable health condition. It can lead to, as we said before, anxiety and depression, but a lot of that is dependent on what an individual perceives as a stressor. Now, relating this to the concept of burnout, which you may be aware of, the research from last provides a useful definition. They define it as a prolonged response to chronic emotional and interpersonal stressors on the job. And it's been said that there are three key dimensions that characterize burnout. These are: one, overwhelming exhaustion and feelings of cynicism, particularly feelings of cynicism about self, others, and the job that maybe once we loved. Secondly, there is then a detachment from the job, and thirdly, a sense of ineffectiveness and a lack of accomplishment. Now, these aspects help distinguish burnout from general work-related stress. So, for example, the definition of burnout clearly places the individual stress experience within a social context, which work can be, and involves the person's conception of both self and others. But why is this important? Well, work-related stress has a major impact on individuals, organisations, and the global economy. For example, work-related stress accounts for over half, 57% of all working days lost to ill health, and given its impact, the law requires employers to tackle it. Next slide, please. Now, although the triggers and sources of stress may be different for all of us, the impact of stress is relatively universal. However, we can only deal with stress and burnout if we recognise the symptoms. So before we get over that curve, before we start to get into stress, our body is telling us that there are things that maybe we need to address that stops us getting into that stage of burnout. So you might notice the following changes in the way you think, feel, behave. Now, we split them into these 4 quadrants because it makes it easier for us then to identify when we might be stressed. Because stress is if you like, an umbrella phrase to describe a range of cognitive, emotional, behavioural, and physiological symptoms. So, for example, you might feel negative. You might notice that you're being indecisive or feeling isolated, feeling nervous, being unable to concentrate. You may act differently, eat more or less than usual, have difficulty sleeping, smoking, drinking, or even taking recreational drugs to cope. And again, although the triggers and the sources of stress may be different for us all, the experience of a stress response is relatively universal. So it's important that we all take stock, keep track, and monitor any of those symptoms because, as we are aware, these can precede mental health concerns like anxiety or depression. In fact, some of the symptoms on there are symptoms of anxiety and depression. They overlap. For example, anxious or racing thoughts, only seeing the negative, symptoms of anxiety, symptoms of depression. Feeling overwhelmed, agitation, irritability, again, symptoms of anxiety, symptoms of depression. However, it's also important to note that if you experience these feelings of stress, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll be diagnosed with any disorder. As we've mentioned, these stress feelings are a normal physiological response. Any anxious feelings in this instance would need to be disproportionate to any danger or threat that you're facing and have an ongoing impact on all aspects of life. Now, as well as those individual indications, there are some more specific indications of what a stress response may look like in work. So we're now going to outline and describe some practical examples of how work-related stress and burnout may present in the workplace. And it may be helpful for you here today to think about this in terms of your own role. So for example, if you're a line manager, you might be able to see trends in your teams in terms of things like sickness absences. For example, are members of your team calling in sick more often? Are they citing things like stress and exhaustion when they do call in sick? If you're in a team, which most of us are, even if we're a team manager, think about the dynamics between team members. Have you noticed more arguments or communication issues coming up? And generally speaking, we're all able to observe our colleagues and check in with them. Is anyone in your workplace seeming less motivated or fed up? Are they saying they have issues but assume nothing will happen if they report them? Now, if you are concerned about anyone, you should check in with them one-to-one in the first instance. They might be able to tell you directly what support they need. And if you're still concerned, you might be able to refer them to your organisation's mental health first aid community if you have one. Or you can signpost them to help inside and outside of your organisation to their EAP, like our PAM Assist, for example. And if you're not their line manager, you can gently encourage them to ask for a meeting with their line manager to discuss how they're feeling if they feel comfortable in doing so. Now, we're going to look at some individual strategies that can help to mitigate against stress and burnout. Now, these are strategies that as individuals we can all take to help prevent or buffer the negative impacts of stress. And the first one is so important. Take breaks. Okay, we won't continue to improve our levels of performance indefinitely. We do need to de-stress, as that stress curve showed. And lots of research has shown that it's important to take regular breaks to restore our attention, especially as most of us do work sitting down in front of a computer. So take a few minutes to maybe walk around the house, the office, to stretch your legs or do a few body stretches to alleviate the physical strain of being sedentary. Set boundaries. Be useful to set rules of engagement for screen time, especially if you're working from home. So switch off from technology where you can. Put your work equipment away if you don't have a dedicated office space to help you transition into home mode after work so you can restore your energy levels. Engage with nature. Again, an abundance of research has shown the positive impact of engaging with nature. One study provides evidence of lower frustration, engagement and arousal, and higher mediation when moving into a green space zone, and higher engagement when moving out of it. Nature provides us all with the opportunity to rest, reflect, and restore ourselves. And owing to many of us working from home or hybrid work, it's not always possible to meet physically with our colleagues or managers. However, one thing we can do whilst home working is to seek out alternative forms of social support. So maybe look at weekly team meetings with colleagues and managers to check in with one another. Maybe offer to do a virtual lunch club, quiz, or coffee morning. And of course, it's really important that we all maintain a healthy lifestyle. For example, exercise offers many positive advantages to both our physical and mental well-being. Make sure you are eating the right foods, sticking to set eating patterns throughout the day, and eating a healthy, balanced diet can keep our energy levels and therefore our concentration levels high. Many people, when they're stressed, it's one of the first things to go out the window is their diet. And sleep. Maintaining a good sleep routine is important. So aim for around 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep per night, as this will have a huge impact on your mood, energy levels, and productivity. And finally, practice self-compassion. Don't forget, be kind to yourselves. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening to me for my part. I'm going to hand over now to Shannon, and I'll speak to you all later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. I hope everyone so far is enjoying it. Thank you very much for listening. Already had some stellar information about stress, burnout, and the impact that that can have on us as an individual. And I know so many of us, even recently, get stressed. We're all busy, we've got lots of stuff going on. And so it is important that day to day we do take care of ourselves. However, what we also want to encourage is within the corporate realm, within organisations, that care and attentiveness is there too. So the second half of this webinar will be presented by myself, and I'm going to split this into 3 sections for you that you can see on this screen here. So we've got offering guidance on creating supportive work cultures that prioritise employee health, showcasing successful corporate health and wellbeing initiatives and their outcomes, and providing tools and resources for organisations to implement sustainable wellbeing programs. Because as we know, it's all well and good as eating well, sleeping well, exercising, and that's absolutely fantastic. And we want to try and encourage that as much as we possibly can. However, it does work 2 ways, and we need to make sure that our company, our organisation, our colleagues, our managers are there for us too. So as I go through each section, you'll more than likely notice that these, all 3 areas are linked. and the suggestions that I give for each one essentially follow along the same path, which is relating to sustainable corporate health and well-being. We want to raise awareness about potential issues and then give some ideas for potential solutions. So the first section that we are going to start with is essentially showcasing some successful corporate health and wellbeing initiatives and their outcomes. So here, ideally, what we want to do with this slide is, as we go through, have a think. Does your company introduce things like this? Are there different things that you can join in with on a daily, weekly basis? And if not, hopefully we can give you some ideas to potentially go and plant in someone's mind and help that grow. So starting off with something that I'm sure, you know, we've all heard of for a long time by now, since COVID-19, which was, goodness me, 4.5 years ago. Time really does go quickly, doesn't it? And what's happened is a lot of employers, companies, organisations have adopted something called flexible working in order to improve the well-being of their employees. So this could be anything from allowing individuals to work on a part-time basis, introducing flexi hours in which people are able to start and finish work earlier or later to suit their needs, or, you know, working from home or a hybrid home and office combination. What this does is it doesn't only increase the amount of trust between an employee and a manager or organisation, which, you know, can lead to a better relationship, but it allows for greater freedom regarding an individual's work-life balance. So worries over things such as caring responsibilities when it comes to picking children up after school, for example, the amount of money spent over, you know, to cover a commute if you're someone who uses public transport, or, you know, petrol's very expensive at the moment, or even something as sitting in traffic for hours on end are reduced with this ability to work from home and reduce, you know, the hours or change them. And what this does for an individual is it reduces those day-to-day stresses. So someone won't come in to the office in the morning and talk about the traffic that they've been sat in, or talk about the fact that they've had to ask a friend of a friend of a friend to go and pick their kids up after school. You know, it takes away all those minute stresses. And it's not to say that it'll fix everything. It's not to say that it takes all the stresses away and, you know, flexi working has created the most, you know, everyone's happy and everyone's content. Absolutely not. But what it does is it alleviates that stress just a little bit in different ways for lots of people. We've also got wellbeing programs, so initiatives that we at Pan Wellness actually do offer. So things like health assessments, educational workshops. What these do is provide assistance to employees surrounding different topics related to their individual health and wellbeing. So when it comes to educational things, giving someone information regarding stress management, mental resilience, or even ideas about how to improve their diet day to day can result in an increased awareness of the responsibility that people have of keeping themselves healthy outside of work. And not only that, but company-wide health assessments, which is something that's starting to grow a lot bigger now, allows the chance for the individual to obtain physical results to take forward, with the idea of goal setting so that they can go away and try and improve or maintain their current health status. Not only that, but as an employer, it gives you sophisticated data to feed into wider health and wellbeing strategies. And what you can do with that is then have a focus or a direction and a proactive approach to your work's culture. So, you know, if you're getting a lot of high blood pressure readings, that might be something you need to look into. Gym discounts are something that is included as a perk quite often now with jobs. So providing employees with the opportunity to improve their physical health has many benefits to organisations. So physical activity in general can improve employee concentration, motivation, and overall mental well-being due to the positive effects that exercise delivers. When we exercise, we combat the stress hormones that build up in our body. If you're someone who enjoys going for a walk or a run in the mornings, you're already setting yourself up, on a good foot. If you're someone who can go and use the gym at lunchtime, perfect, go and burn off some of that morning stress. Not only that, but increased physical vitality can then lead to a reduced chance of long-term health problems, which could potentially lead to absences or a decreased functionality within teams. And finally, something that we're all grateful for at the moment, it helps to take financial pressures off, so they can support hobbies, which is something that a lot of people have come to appreciate, especially recently. Cost of living, it has affected all of us. And so even just enabling us to, be able to enjoy that perk without worrying about having to pay for it the next week, the next month, is something that is really, really helpful. One that a lot more companies are now starting to introduce is volunteer opportunities. So what this does is it allows for an increased sense of achievement and well-being improvement. It gives someone the chance to give back. And within a company-wide volunteering initiative, it might be that employees are encouraged 1-2 days a year to take themselves away from the workplace, go out and offer help and support to charities or institutions in need. And what this does is not only give a chance for the community to benefit, which is absolutely fantastic, but it allows the volunteer to feel a sense of accomplishment and achievement, that they've actually made a difference. This in itself not only gives them, a break away from the computer, a break away from the office, which I'm sure we all appreciate, but it allows them to explore different avenues of care that they might not have potentially considered. They might go on to do more volunteering or to, offer help to other places. And more companies are, rightly so, focused on social value in their ESG agendas. ESG stands for environmental, social and government agendas, and having a robust volunteering policy is a great opportunity for an individual to give back. And then finally, we've got something along the lines of a physical activity program. So I'm not sure if any of you have had this introduced within your workplace, but companies in general that encourage an improvement or maintenance of physical health tend to see a greater return on investment when it comes to employee productivity and performance. So it's been proven that exercise causes an increase in brain activity, mental alertness, and increased adrenaline. So therefore, different ideas such as, company office walking groups at lunchtime, lunchtime fitness classes, or something like a cycle to work scheme are excellent motivators to remind employees to keep themselves active and not only look after their mental health, which is important, but their physical health too. In my previous job, for example, it was the case that they had lunchtime yoga classes, stretching classes, and they were absolutely brilliant. It gave you that breakaway. It gave you a chance to move your body, stretch yourself off after sitting in a chair, and you got to meet people. It was a social aspect as well. When it comes to creating a working environment that prioritises health and well-being, it is important to make sure that it's one of openness, honesty, and inclusivity. And there are a few ways that we can do that I've got on the screen here. In general, take away from this slide, we just need to be able to talk more and communicate, but with a few more specific examples for you. So manager training. With the many workshops that my team and I and Adam deliver on a daily basis, I would personally say that some of the most important ones are those which are dedicated to managers, from topics such as handling sensitive conversations to supporting mental well-being at work. We provide the up-to-date knowledge and information to help managers create this work culture in which employees can thrive and feel like a valued member of a team, not just, a cog in a machine. And this education reduces the perception of stress within a workplace and can give tools to help assist with the situations that may arise. We are aware that managers, I'm not a manager myself, but, I can imagine there's lots of plates spinning all the time. You've got to stay on top of lots of things, lots of employees to oversee, look after, encourage, motivate, and it can be quite stressful. But as I said, having those tools allows you to try and promote that healthy work environment in which people feel like they're able to look after their physical and mental health. General team etiquette is so important. So in regard to overall conversations about health and well-being, there should hopefully be ideals that are followed within the workplace. So we've got general practices such as showing empathy active listening, challenging stigmas or incorrect information, things like positive reinforcement. And one of the most important ones, I would say, is just signposting to further resources. We're not all expected to have the answer when it comes to someone asking about physical health, mental health, but if we have those tools, those resources to give to them, then that person can take charge of their own situation. And these are all key things that employees can do, which can encourage a positive and supportive atmosphere within a team. If someone's well-being is suffering, it should be known company-wide which resources are available and how to access, so that that individual feels like they're able to deal effectively and efficiently if the need rises. And then finally, team building. So this is a little section I absolutely love. I love my team within this company. I think they're absolutely fantastic. And when an organisation provides opportunities for a team to build cohesion and create those relationships, it's so, so important. And, I'm sure we'll all agree, even more so now that not everyone's in the office together. It might be the case that you go into the office on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and, someone you work with goes on Mondays and Thursdays. You don't see them in person. And it is a shame. Obviously, life has happened. It gets in the way. But what we need to make sure we do is that if you are working from home or you've got a hybrid combination, that we need to make sure you're not feeling left out. So team building is an essential way to encourage open communication, which can provide an avenue for transparency related to well-being as a whole. So if you're someone who in your team, you don't really have any team building things, you could potentially suggest team days out, weekly group chats that are unrelated to work, or if you've got training days coming up, have something fun and engaging at the end of it, such as an activity or a quiz. I don't know if anyone loves a quiz as much as I do. Pub quizzes for me all the way, but it's something that can really reduce the stress, get people laughing, chatting, just make it a nicer place for you all to work. And what this not only does is it gets people to share information. You can share support, guidance relating to a whole genre of topics. Additionally, if you are a manager and you aim to make the activities associated with health and fitness, rolling on the positives, it's a surefire way to get endorphins flowing. You can break up the monotony of the day, or even just educate and increase awareness around different topics. So everything, that you could possibly do just to get that support, that guidance going is perfect. And then just going on to the final section from me. So we do have a couple of suggestions when it comes to organisation having the tools and the resources to implement these sustainable programmes. So starting off on the top one here, as previously mentioned, wellbeing programmes such as interactive workshops, webinars with yours truly today is a great way to share and showcase information to everyone. And what this does is it gives an employee the chance to take charge with their own health, both inside and outside of work. To an extent, an increased responsibility can lead to a greater sense of achievement, and then a knock-on effect can occur. They can go on to set more goals, achieve more things, and this can then positively impact other areas of their life, including their work. And a useful tool to use when it comes to inciting potential change or improvement is something known as motivational interviewing. So I'm not sure if anyone has, you might have heard of it, you might use it on a day-to-day basis, but essentially motivational interviewing relies on using people's own reasons to change. So this was something that came about in the 70s, the 80s, and it was used to try and help people who were, this is a very extreme example, obviously, people who were had an alcohol addiction. What happens is if you tell someone to change, if you're someone who is stuck in your old ways, if someone tells you to change, you are less likely to change than if you were to decide to do so by yourself. So in relation to this, if someone, isn't very much into exercise, if they don't want to eat healthy, the more they're told to do so, it might be the case that the less likely they are to do it, or the less likely they are to change this behavior. However, if they were to receive information and education about that topic and what eating badly or what not doing exercise might do for you in the long term, that might, awaken them on the inside and say, oh, actually, I do need to, I want to stay fit and healthy so I can play with my grandchildren when I get older, something like that. It allows them to slowly come around to the idea of making that decision for themselves. And then from that, they feel like it's within their own best interest. They've come up with the idea, and that idea reinforces that positive motion. And it's the same with something like stopping smoking, for example. If someone is told smoking is bad for you, you shouldn't do it, you might think, oh, well, nothing's happened to me so far. But if we educate them about the effects that could potentially happen, they might think, oh, actually, I don't want that to happen to me. I am going to cut down, I'm going to stop, or something like that. Something such as a monthly HR letter. So a great way to increase the awareness of health and wellbeing initiatives within a company is by making the resources easily accessible. So ideas such as a monthly HR letter would allow for help and support to be highlighted so that employees wouldn't A, have to go out of their way to speak to people if they didn't want to, or B, I know how many emails we have. We don't want to have to keep trawling back through, back when you started your welcome pack, which could have been 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago in Adam's case. You don't want to have to go back digging out old company documents. So it's something which every month, everything is there for you to see. Phone numbers for support if you need them, different exercise classes that are going on in the lunch breaks that month. It could be the fact that they, showcase the fact that their canteen, they're going to start putting out more fruit for people to take, I'm going to say for free. I don't know if your company would agree to that, but, just trying to increase the amount of healthiness that we as employees are able to showcase. And not only that, but it gives an easy way for updates on support to be communicated. So we all have countless emails day to day. It might be the case that someone from HR emailed you at, 9:10 in the morning, just as all of your emails for the week started to come through. You're not going to see it. Or if you do, it might be a case of, oh, right, I'm going to have a look at that later, and it gets lost. So monthly HR letters that could be on a company interface or a company website is a really, really good way to have everything there readily available for you to go and find. And finally, we've got stress risk assessments, also known as SRAs. And if you are a manager or a line manager, team leader, you'll know exactly what these are. So essentially, these are a fantastic way for managers and employees alike to reduce the likelihood of work-related stress. So it's a tool for supporting managers in facilitating a discussion with employees regarding pressure sources. And what this means is they can then try to develop an action plan. So, put things in place, logistics, different things like that. And it helps to develop manager-employee relationships. But that being said, it doesn't just have to be done for an individual. So an SRA can be created for teams as well. What this does is it improves, even more relationships at once, and it encourages that idea or that atmosphere of open communication. So managers are able to open the idea up to a team, allow them to give suggestions and ideas, which in turn, if there's no solutions, just being able to get that off your chest, being able to say, this is something that I'm not entirely happy with. This is going to reduce stress. It will improve team motivation, cohesion, and hopefully performance in return. And typically, and something we want to try and highlight for you now, SRAs are seen as a tool to be used once someone is stressed or once someone has reached burnout. But in fact, it's so, so important to ensure that line managers know this shouldn't be used as a proactive tool. This should be used as a proactive tool to prevent burnout and ensure balance consistently. So lots and lots of ideas there, hopefully for you to take away. It might be the case that your team, your company does all of these things, and that is fantastic. But what we wanted to do today is go into a bit of the information and just showcase some things for you to take away. Lovely. What we're going to do now, just very quickly summarize, and then I'm going to pass over to Adam for the closing words. So takeaways from today. Burnout is a prolonged response to chronic emotional and interpersonal stresses on the job. Individuals can use a range of general stress management strategies that they can use to buffer the impact of stress. And there are many potential strategies that a company as well may use to improve health and well-being for its employees. So, I hope you've enjoyed today's workshop, and a final message from me before I pass to Adam. If nothing else, I'm hoping you've come to this and used it as kind of like a little bit of a check-in for yourself. Ask yourself, how are you feeling at the moment? If you've looked at those symptoms and said, oh, actually, I am having, I'm experiencing a few of those at the moment. I'm hoping you go into the weekend today, practicing a bit more self-care, be a bit selfish, look after yourself. And thank you very much for listening to me, everyone.
Thank you very much, Shannon. I particularly like the idea of the monthly HR letters, as you mentioned. I've been at PAM for so long now, I think my old documents are still chiselled on stone tablets. So something like that is a really helpful way of making sure that people, again, are updated. Not just new members of staff, but staff who maybe been with the company and organisation for a long time. Often it's assumed that they know everything and that everything is still available to them. But again, that gentle reminder, again, is always welcome. So thank you very much, Shannon. And again, thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance. Of course, today's session is a taster session of some of the things that we run throughout the whole of PAM Wellness. Some of these sessions are here on the screen, but there are many, many more topics around health, mental well-being, general mental well-being, corporate health, etc., that we run. And we'd be delighted to speak to you all about your organisation's needs. Maybe there is something that we can tailor for you if there's nothing off the shelf that tickles your fancy and you want something bespoke for your organisation. We do that for many companies. We sit down, talk to them about their needs, what they want to get out of the sessions, and make sure the learning outcomes are something that are tangible for the organisation. So if there's something that you feel that you'd like to talk to us about, there are some contact details here on the screen. We'd be delighted, as I say, to talk to you about your organisation's needs around anything around well-being. Do let us know, and somebody will be there to get back to you. We also mentioned that this webinar is going to be available through YouTube. There is the link to find it. I think it's going to be available in the coming week on that YouTube channel, but there is also the other available webinars that we've posted previously. You'll be able to see my ugly mug again doing some of those. But I just want to say again, thank you very much, Shannon, for your time today. We're both going to be around for a few minutes now to answer any questions people have had. I know there was one earlier which I responded to there in the Q&A. Somebody else posted something in the chat. I'll say thank you very much. Really enjoyed the session. You're very welcome. Thank you very much for your attendance as well. So if you want to post anything in the Q&A, feel free to do so. If not, again, thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance. Hopefully you've all enjoyed it and taken something from being here as well.